Hello, welcome to Guide London. My name's Nick Salmond. I'm a London Blue Badge tourist guide and a member of the Association of Professional Tourist Guides, and that's the organisation that runs the Guide London website. Now, over the last year, we've been doing a lot of broadcasts showing you a little bit about London because at the moment, you're not allowed to come to London because of the lockdown. But what we can do is we can give you a little benefit of a virtual tour of London. And over the summer, we've been telling you a bit about London's history, about some of its architecture, about some of the famous people who've lived here, and about some of the different areas of London. Now, if you've missed any of our broadcasts, then the thing to do is go and search for them on our YouTube channel or on Facebook. All you have to do is search for Guide London, and you can find all our broadcasts, around 50 of them so far, indexed there, and you can go back and find the ones that you've missed. Now, today we're talking about an area slightly out the centre of London. London, in case you don't know, is split up into 32 boroughs. And only one of those boroughs is actually bisected by the River Thames, in that the River Thames runs through it rather than alongside it. And that is the borough of Richmond upon Thames, which is in the southwest of the city, around about 6 miles from the centre. A very historic part of London. It's got a lot of associations with the Tudor dynasty for a start. King Henry VII had his great palace down at Richmond by the river. It's where he died. It's where a number of his children were born. And now the palace is long gone, but Richmond still holds many attractions for the tourists should you want to venture out there. There's some wonderful buildings to see and there's some wonderful sights. And I'm delighted to say that today we're joined by Targett, who's going to take us on a virtual walk alongside the River Thames in Richmond and tell us about some of the buildings you can see there and some of the people who've lived there. Now, we are broadcasting live, so if you've got any questions for Anna, just put them in the comments and we'll try and answer them at the end of the broadcast. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Anna, who's going to tell us about the River Thames in Richmond. Anna.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richmond upon Thames. And today I am going to be taking you on a virtual tour from, normally this tour is from Hampton Palace to Kew Gardens, which is about 15 miles by this winding river, the River Thames. But we're just going to do a little bit of a sneak preview. We're going to do a little bit of that. Normally we see 3 palaces, 2 stately homes, several houses of the rich and famous. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to start at the beginning and we'll see how far we get. So welcome to Richmond upon Thames. Now we're going to start at Hampton Court Palace, which is this huge, great big palace just on the very edge of the borough. And as you look at it, you can see how large it is. This is from the side view. And on the left-hand side, you have all those tall chimneys and brick exterior. And that is the Tudor Palace. So that is the palace of 500 years ago. The palace that was eventually lived in or used by Henry VIII. And then on the right-hand side, you can see it's very different. That is the Baroque Palace of 300 years ago. And so here we have 2 palaces in one. But let's take a look at the front entrance, because this is where we see the Tudor style. And we can see those crenellations and those turrets. And this, as I said, lived in by Henry VIII at various times. He, of course, is famous for his 6 wives. And also, what is even more important is the fact that he changed the religion of the country from Catholicism to the Church of England. Now, if you are invited here, you will be invited through this gateway, but only if you are nobility, only if you are royalty, if you are somebody special. And as you go in, you will see that there are these wonderful beasts. These are statues with coats of arms in front of them, and they represent Henry VIII's family. So we have the Beaufort family, we have the Greyhound of Richmond, and we also have beasts representing the Seymour family, Jane Seymour being the 3rd wife of Henry VIII, the one who gave him a son, so therefore became the favourite wife. Now, we're not going to go inside today, but let's go round to the back and see the difference between these 2 different palaces. Here you have the palace that was built by William and Mary, who came to the throne as joint monarchs in 1689. And they wanted to build a rival palace to Versailles in France. So they started building, but sadly, Mary died about 5 years into their reign, and William didn't have the heart to continue with it. So we ended up having the old palace not being knocked down. We had the new palace built on the side of the old palace. So that's the reason why we have two palaces in one. Now, I do highly recommend that you come here because Hampton Court Palace is just absolutely fantastic. So much to see. But if you come, why not try coming on one of the festival days? And then you might meet some rather interesting characters. Take, for example, this knight in shining armor. Now, he is wearing a suit of armor that is typical of Tudor times, and he's showing it how you strap it all together and how easy it is, in fact, to move around, not nearly as heavy as you might think it was. He would be assisted by maybe some master craftsmen. Now, the company that runs Hampton Court Palace is very, very keen to ensure that everything is accurate historically. So you can be pretty sure that this is exactly what master craftsmen of 450, 500 years ago might wear to assist the knights in shining armor. But when they go out into the field, what do they look like? So here they come, galloping down the tilt yard and getting ready for the joust. And in the same way as we have now, we have our football teams in, specific colours. So in those days, they had the same thing. But the colours would be the capes that they would tie around the suits of armour. And that way, the viewers would be able to know who they needed to support. And there we can see modern viewers in the background. But in Tudor times, what might they have looked like? They would have looked very different. So we might have some courtiers dressed in their finest outfits. Look at that man there. Black was a very difficult colour to produce in Tudor times. And so you would have to be pretty wealthy to wear black. And then you can see that lady dressed in the latest fashions. Look at that beautiful headdress she's wearing. Well, that is the latest fashion from France, brought here by the Queen herself, who had been educated in France. So maybe we will also see Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's famous second wife, for whom he changed the religion of the country. And there she is, looking very, very fashionable, it has to be said, and on the arm of her king, Henry VIII, with his chain of office, with his fur-lined cape, and of course with his jaunty hat, which we recognise so well. Now, I can't resist a sneak peek inside the palace before we go. As I said, do come here. You can spend practically a whole day here. This is one of the courts or courtyards that we find inside the palace, and there are several of them. This is the largest. This is called base court or lower court. And in the distance behind, we can see that building pointing up behind the gatehouse. That is Henry VIII's Great Hall, and that really must be seen. But for now, let's head on down the river and off we go. And the river itself is 215 miles long. It's the longest river in England. And this at Teddington Lock is where it becomes tidal. So you can see the weir there just on the left-hand side. But if we look the other way up the river, we can see these lovely little boats puttering around on the river is very much the thing to do in this area. Many people, members of boating clubs. And also, if you have a view over the river, then you're very, very privileged, very expensive to have a property overlooking the river. But quite frequently, we have activities that take place on the river. This one here is a river pageant. So occasionally we have river pageants. The most famous one of recent years took place in 2012. And many of us will remember the Queen Elizabeth II, on her beautiful boat, the Gloriana, sailing up through the centre of London. And there it is, that beautiful boat that was made especially for her. And you can see at the front, there is her coat of arms, E2R, written on the front of there. Okay, so let's move on now to our first house. And this one is called Strawberry Hill House. And Strawberry Hill House is actually really a very important house because this gave us a new style of architecture. And it was built by somebody called Horace Walpole, youngest son of our first ever Prime Minister, who became Prime Minister in 1730. Now, he found a cottage out here in what was an area that was becoming terribly fashionable amongst the nobility and the wealthy. Find yourself somewhere on the Thames, find yourself a house. And so he did. He bought this cottage and he decided to embellish it. Now, he loved castles and cathedrals. And as you look at this, you can see the crenellations there, looks just like a castle, but you can also see the pinnacles that look just like a Gothic cathedral. And so this is a very new style. In fact, we call it Strawberry Hill Gothic style. And he was really into the Gothic. In fact, he was the first person ever to write a Gothic novel. He wrote a novel called The Castle of Otranto. Now let's take a quick look inside and we will see that he had lots of imagination, because that tracery of the windows of cathedrals is mirrored inside, even up his main staircase. And then if we go into his library, even his books are surrounded by pinnacles and statues, the same way as a cathedral would be. And then finally, the most impressive room, I think, of this house is the grand hallway, which is what he had built was to house his art collection. And if we look at the ceiling, we can see this special style that was developed here in Britain, or in England, I should say, this fan vaulting of a specific type of Gothic style called perpendicular Gothic. You might find this in Westminster Abbey, you might find this in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, but it won't be gold, because it was only in the 1700s that this gold embellishment became so fashionable. And Horace Walpole was very fashionable. Now, as I said, moving on to Twickenham, which had by this time become very, very popular. Twickenham itself was a tiny little village on the very, very edge, well, way outside London in those days. But it was very, very beautiful. And actually it still is. Twickenham is mainly known for being the home of England rugby. It's famous for its stadium. But the village itself, and let's take a look on the riverside at some of the pretty houses that still exist. It gives you some kind of idea how beautiful this village was. So here we have houses of 300 years ago, 450 years ago, Georgian style, Tudor style. And just behind there, we have the main street of the original village, which still exists. And it's really quite a beautiful little village, all pedestrianised now. It's a lovely place to come. Looking on the right-hand side, you can see a pub there, the Eel Pie Pub. And the Eel Pie actually refers to an island. And that island is right in the middle of the Thames. Why don't we take a look at that island? Let's take a walk over this bridge. Now, this is just a footbridge, no vehicles. We go over to the far side, and this is the main street of Eel Pie Island. Yes, people live here. They can't bring their vehicles. They can't even bring bicycles. Everything's on foot, but it's very tiny, with some beautiful little houses, clapboard houses, and others that are made out of corrugated iron. The kind of people that live here are very bohemian and artistic, and they love to have fun with this. This is great. Here you've got all sorts of signs that have been picked up in junk shops adorning this particular building. And the next one is the one that I really love the most. This has actually got an ice cream cone on the roof. So every summer, apart from this year, normally they would have a kind of artists' festival here. But Eel Pie Island is really, really well known, much more nowadays, for its music scene, because in the 60s, this became a popular place for music. And this hotel, which sadly no longer exists, this is an old postcard that I'm showing you here, was built in the 1800s, and it was a very popular place for people to come and eat eel pies. And then in between the wars, they would come for tea dances. But after the Second World War, it was a little bit run down. And so it started to be used as a music venue. And lots of really famous people came to play here. Originally, it was a jazz venue, so you had people like George Melly and Acker Bilk who came here. But then, in the early days of rock and roll, we had some really famous people who actually played at this venue. Take Mick Jagger, for example. And then, another one that you might see at the top of that panel, there he is, Rod Stewart, when he was with his first ever band called Steam Packet. So a real a connotation of music. It's remembered for its music scene. Sadly, that is no longer the case. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a taste, a little bit further along the river, we're going to move along and we're going to see one of these stately homes. And the one we're going to see is called Ham House, a beautiful building which is now run by the National Trust. And the thing that's really great about Ham House is that it is built in the 1600s and added to in the 1600s, renovations made in the 1600s, but hardly any other period is reflected in this house. So it is a house of the Stewart style, and it belonged to a rather unknown man, actually. His name was William Murray. He became very wealthy because he was schooled alongside the king, King Charles I, in the early 1600s. But you know, Charles I occasionally was rather naughty, and so he needed to be punished. But you can't possibly tell the king off. You can't possibly punish the king. And so William Murray became effectively his whipping boy. He would take the punishment or the whipping for the king. As a result, the king was really quite very friendly with William Murray and very happy with him. And when they grew up, he bestowed all sorts of honours on him. He grew wealthy enough to be able to afford a wonderful house like this. And before we finish, let's just have a quick sneak peek inside and see what the interior of a house of the 1600s looks like. Lots of wooden paneling, and you can see there's amazing portraits of the family over the centuries on the walls there. And this is what we call the long gallery or the long hall. And this would have been quite typical of stately homes for the wealthy in the 1500s, 1600s, and into the 1700s, because the ladies wearing these beautiful big silk gowns were very expensive, difficult to wash, and therefore they didn't want to ruin them. So they would take their exercise by walking up and down the long hall. Well, I hope that has given you some kind of idea of this lovely tour. Virtualtourslondon.co.uk if you'd like to see more of this one, or maybe to watch some others with a professional blue badge tourist guide.
Anna, thank you so much. That was fascinating. It just goes to show that you don't just have to stay in central London, do you, to see some amazing sights. There's lots to see all around London. And I know this is part of a much longer tour that you do around Richmond. So the best way to get in touch with you is through your website, Virtual Tours London.
Yes.
And obviously when the lockdown is over, people can come and visit you in person. How easy is it to get to Richmond from central London?
Oh, it's really very easy. There is a tube to Richmond. There are trains to Richmond. If you wanted to go to Hampton Court, that has its own station. So you could go to Hampton Court itself. If you wanted to go to Kew Gardens, that has its own tube station. So just look on the map of southwest London and you'll find very easily about half an hour and you'll be out here in no time. Very easy.
Excellent. If anyone's got any questions, Fana, then just put them in the comments. There are a few comments already, mostly from people saying where they are in the world. We've got people from all around. We've got someone here from Odessa, Olga, who's in the Ukraine. We've got Anna, who's in Naples.
Ciao, Napoli.
Mariangela is from Venice.
Ciao.
We've got Bodil from Norway.
Norway.
Don Louise says Strawberry House is amazing. It is an amazing place to visit, isn't it? Because it's just so unusual.
Yes, it is, and it was really, as I said, really quite groundbreaking, and it's a joy to visit. Not very many people know about it, so you know it's never crowded. It has some lovely art inside as well, so it's very worthwhile coming out this way.
So Larissa says thank you very much for the interesting lecture. Bodil says thank you so much for the inspirational journey along the Thames. We've got Larissa in Canada as well. So if you wanted to walk from, say, Hampton Court Palace to Richmond, how long would it take you, do you reckon?
Now, Hampton Court Palace is the one place that is a little bit further out. But from Strawberry Hill House, for example, to Richmond, you could go past Ham House. You could walk along the river and you could go past Ham House, Marble Hill House. You could go into Richmond itself and go and see what remains of Henry VIII's palace. So that would take you about half an hour. It's a lovely thing to do, to take a stroll along the river.
Especially in the summer, isn't it? It's very beautiful down there by the river. But very different to the river in central London, where it's much wider. You've got a much more sort of country feel to Richmond.
Yes, and it's also much, much greener. That's the great joy of it. You really feel as if you're at one with nature at the same time.
Absolutely, definitely worth a visit. If you want to find out more about Anna, then the best place to find out about any of our guides on Guide London is to go to the website. It's guidelondon.org.uk. And if you're looking for a specific guide, then all you have to do is type in their Christian name at the top, if you know their Christian name, and it will show you all the guides with that name. And there you come up first on the list, of course. And then you can see a bit more about whichever guide you're looking for. And you can also see when they're free as well. So if you want to book a particular guide, you can see their availability. We've also got a section on our webpage on virtual tours. If you click on London Virtual Tour, it will tell you all the different types of virtual tours that the guides offer. So as well as the Richmond walks, there are walks all around London. There's some of our great famous buildings that you can walk around. You can see Tudor London, you can see Georgian London, whatever you like. There's bound to be a guide somewhere on the website who can accommodate you. It's a good way, it's a good present actually with Christmas coming up. If you want to think of something different for the family maybe, how about a virtual tour so they can enjoy a bit of London from their own home? Or if you're a member of an organisation and you're stuck for things to do this year because you can't have Christmas parties, then how about a virtual tour? The easiest way to do it is to go to our website, look for virtual tours, and right down at the bottom of the virtual tour page, you find a contact form where you just fill in your details, you submit that off, and our system will match you with 3 guides from Guide London, and they will then get back to you and they'll tell you the sort of things that they can offer virtual tours. So it's very easy to use. All you have to do is go to guidelondon.org.uk. So Anna, thank you so much for today. It's a fascinating walk along the river, and I hope that people will come and visit it virtually, and then hopefully next year, when the vaccine is arrived and lockdown is lifted, people will come back and visit in person. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back at the same time next Tuesday when we have a special program looking at the history of Christmas. So join us next Tuesday. From Anna and from myself for the moment, goodbye.